Hello. I present to you the forecast for the next lunar month, which will begin with the new moon on the 17th of April 2026. This new moon will occur in the 28th degree of Aries. What are its features? You can note that the luminaries are about to enter the sign of Taurus and begin to form a square aspect, tense towards Pluto. This means that the projections of both the luminaries and Pluto this month will be more tense than usual. The second point I want to draw attention to is the stellium of planets in Aries. Neptune, Mercury, Mars, and Saturn form such an unfavorable tense quartet of planets, which will be reflected on astrological cards by a single common tense projection. However, there is a surprise in this lunar month. The fact is that right now the comet C25R3 PanSTARRS is flying near our Sun. And this comet at the moment of the new moon is in the same degree of the zodiac as Saturn, in the 8th degree of Aries. The comet is unlikely to indicate any favorable turns of events, rather it increases the risks of extraordinary incidents. The projection of this comet will almost exactly coincide with the projection of Saturn. A comet in conjunction with any planet is always an extraordinary event, so the next month may also be extraordinary. Saturn, I remind you, signifies authority, mines, earthquakes, and elderly people. Well, the conjunction of Mars with Saturn naturally indicates military activity and industrial accidents. On the positive side, we can note a strong Venus in Taurus, a strong Jupiter in Cancer. The projections of these two planets will maximally soften the tense aspects of the planets. You can note the midpoints. This month, Mercury is in the midpoint between Uranus and Pluto, and Mars between Saturn and Neptune. All this indicates that the projections of Mercury and Mars will also be quite tense. A couple of medical tips. In this lunar month, the likelihood of exacerbation of chronic diseases related to the sign of Taurus increases. This is the area of the neck, skin, thyroid gland. Due to the accumulation of planets in Aries, the risks of harm from fire, cuts, and injuries due to haste are increased. Astrological prescription. Contact with the water element, walking, massage, sleep, physical exercises, and generally such heavy physical efforts in this lunar month make sense to do after a warm-up, and haste will be harmful when using vehicles. Regarding the forecast of extraordinary incidents, it should be said that in this lunar month, the likelihood of emergencies related to the elements of earth and fire increases first and foremost. These are earthquakes, volcanoes, military and criminal activity, terrorist attacks, road traffic accidents, and industrial accidents. In the regional projections of the luminaries of Neptune, there may be floods, and with the participation of Pluto, strong winds are likely. In general, the theme of cyclones and storms, road traffic accidents, communication means accidents, cables, bridges is intensified after Uranus enters the sign of Gemini, which will occur on the 26th of April. Let's move directly to astrogeographical forecasts. I will focus only on the most tense or most positive moments. Europe. Here I will immediately note the increased likelihood of seismic activity and volcanoes in Iceland. The lunar month looks tense for Spain. Moderate tension for the United Kingdom and France. The projection of Venus will create favorable conditions for the Baltic republics, Finland, Belarus, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, However, the projection of Uranus will create conditions for emergencies in Murmansk, in the Leningrad region, in Smolensk, as well as in the central part of Ukraine and in Crimea, and naturally in Turkey. The next month also looks tense for Egypt, Israel, Syria, Lebanon, and Cyprus. However, for Iran, which is currently known to be at war, there are no tense planetary projections in the next lunar month. This means that the pace of military actions will decrease. Asia. Here I would first note the joint projection of Mercury, Neptune, Mars, Saturn, and a comet, which are projected approximately in this area. And this combination will indicate tension arising in Russia, near cities such as Omsk and Surgut. But the greatest strength of this planetary combination will manifest in Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the western part of India. In addition, the situation appears quite tense in Transbaikalia, around Lake Baikal, in Irkutsk, in Ulan-Ude, and in Mongolia. The projection of Jupiter will create excellent conditions in Tomsk and Novosibirsk, as well as for those who love mountaineering and travel in Nepal. The projection of Venus will create excellent conditions in the Russian Far East, in Korea, in Vladivostok, and in Magadan. However, the projection of Uranus will create conditions for seismic activity and some industrial accidents in Japan. In Japan, by the way, some public protest may be noticeable in the next lunar month. And naturally, attention should be paid to the tension from the strongest tense planetary combination in the Kamchatka region in Africa. The greatest tension falls on the coast of West Africa, partially affecting the Cape Verde Islands. Among other countries, I can note tension in Algeria, Congo, and the Central African Republic. The projection of Uranus, as I mentioned, affects Egypt, Sudan, and Uganda. The projection of Venus will create more or less favorable conditions for holidays in Egypt, but closer to the Libyan border. In North America, this central region should be noted immediately, where seismic activity, transport accidents, and industrial accidents are possible. The comet, which has already been mentioned, is also projected here. I would also like to point out that since the capital of Canada, Ottawa, is affected, the greatest damage from tension in the next lunar month is expected not in the USA but in Canada. Here I would note Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Montreal from Ottawa. Washington experiences on one hand a tense influence from Pluto, but on the other hand a favorable influence from Venus. Therefore, for the USA in the next lunar month, if any emergencies threaten this country, they will have an insignificant local character. South America. Here I would note the favorable influence for Venezuela, Paraguay, and Uruguay. There is tension in the area of Georgetown, Guyana, as well as in the area of the island of Jamaica, in Colombia and Peru. And of course, in the southern part of South America, shipping will be risky due to the high likelihood of strong storms. In Australia, we have a clear indication of great tension in the area of New Caledonia, in the area of New Zealand, in the area of the Fiji Islands. Here, cyclones, storms, and earthquakes are possible. The projection of Uranus indicates approximately the same problems in parts of Indonesia. However, Pluto will create tension in the area of Vietnam, Singapore, and also in the west of Indonesia. This concludes the forecast for the next lunar months. I wish you all the best. Let's watch together to see what interesting things the comets, which are aligning with such a serious planet as Saturn during this new moon, will offer us. Goodbye, all the best.